My name is Ronan. I'm 30 years old. On the night of my 30th birthday, I sat at the end of my parents' dining table, staring at a pot roast that had gone lukewarm, and a cake that nobody really wanted to eat. The room was dim in that half-hearted way, one overhead light buzzing quietly, a lamp in the corner casting a dull yellow patch on the wall. From the living room, the sound of a baseball game floated in, my dad pretending to care more about the score than anything happening at the table. My sister's husband was already 2 beers in before we even served the food. He sat hunched over his phone, thumb moving in a lazy scroll, occasionally muttering something about getting older without once looking in my direction. My mom moved around like a hostess in a hotel lobby, polite but detached, checking the roast, straightening napkins, avoiding eye contact she didn't feel like holding. My sister topped off her wine without asking anyone else if they wanted more. And then there was Ava. She sat opposite me, shoulders swallowed by an oversized hoodie, earbuds dangling around her neck, eyes fixed on her screen. Her fingers tapped rhythmically, face lit by whatever world she was choosing over this one. She didn't look up when I came in. She didn't look up when we said grace. She didn't look up when the food was passed around. It was the kind of family gathering where everyone showed up because that's what you're supposed to do, not because anyone actually wanted to be there. My sister had offered to host something small for my birthday at my parents' house, said it would be low-key, just family. And I'd agreed because saying no has never been my specialty. That's always been my assigned role, the agreeable one, the one who doesn't argue, the one who shows up. When my mom finally brought out the cake, she forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. 30 faintly crooked candles flickered in front of me. She lit them carefully, one by one, as if that act alone proved we were all closer than we were. My dad lingered in the doorway between rooms, still pretending to follow the game, remote in hand like a shield. "Make a wish," my mom said. Everyone watched me for a moment, or at least pretended to. I leaned forward, exhaled, and the flames went out in one soft breath. A few scattered claps followed, thin, obligatory, like we were all participating in a rehearsal instead of a real moment. Then Ava finally glanced up. "Wow," she said, lips curling just enough. "Still single at your age? That's sad." The words dropped between us like someone had knocked a glass off the table. It wasn't even loud, but it felt like a slap. I waited for someone to say something. My mom, my sister, my dad still holding the remote like a lifeline. My mom just nodded. She didn't laugh, didn't scold, didn't defend me. She nodded like Ava had pointed out a weather report, like my relationship status at 30 was some inevitable, disappointing fact we'd all quietly agreed on. My sister reached for her wine. My dad coughed and shifted his weight. My brother-in-law gave a short, amused breath that might have been a laugh. No one met my eyes. I smiled. That's what I do. I smiled like it was fine, like the joke had bounced right off me. I cut myself a slice of cake and said thank you. I pretended it was delicious. I cleared plates, carried dishes to the sink, helped my mom wrap leftovers. I hugged them all goodbye at the door, told them it was nice, told them I appreciated the dinner. But in my head, I'd left the second Ava opened her mouth. Driving back to my apartment, the streetlights smeared into lines across the windshield. I didn't turn on any lights when I got home. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door, sat down on the couch, and stared out the window at the building across the street. People moved around in their lit-up windows, going about their lives, and I just sat there in the dark, replaying that moment over and over. It wasn't the first time they'd said something out of line. It wasn't even the worst thing anyone in my family had ever thrown at me. But the timing, the tone, the silence afterward, that was new. Something about it pressed against a fault line I'd been pretending wasn't there. My mind wandered back to all the nights I'd been the one Ava called when she was younger. 15 and sobbing because her parents were screaming at each other again. She'd call me shaking, begging for somewhere else to be. I'd pick her up, take her for ice cream, get her out of the blast zone for a few hours. When she didn't get into her first choice college, I stayed up late helping her rewrite essays, combing through her drafts until the words felt sharper, more convincing. When tuition bills started showing up, I stepped in. Nobody had to ask. I opened a joint account specifically to help cover her college expenses. Every month, I funneled money into it. I linked a debit card in her name so she could buy books, food, whatever she needed. half her tuition, paid by the uncle she'd just called pathetic without even blinking. I thought about the late-night texts from my sister whenever her household fell apart, when her husband drank too much again, when the rent was short, when the fridge was empty, when the car insurance was past due. Every crisis somehow slid onto my plate. Just this once. We'll pay you back. You know how things are? I'd never said no, not once. I've been the emotional support system for a family that never once offered the same. My sister leaned on me like I owed her, like her life unraveling was a shared burden I'd signed up for at birth. Her husband barely held a job, drifting from shift to shift, spending his free hours drinking and complaining. She said she was scared of him sometimes, but not enough to leave him, not enough to stop defending him to everyone else. And there, in the dark of my apartment, something inside me finally shifted. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed harshly in the dark, lighting up the coffee table and the pile of unopened mail beside it. I logged into the joint account. The numbers stared back at me, months of sacrifice condensed into digits. It was more than enough to get Ava through another semester, enough to prove I'd been doing more than anyone knew. My cursor hovered over the freeze card option. I hesitated, heart pounding in my throat. It felt ridiculous that something so monumental could come down to a click and a confirmation box. I thought about Ava, about the nights in my car with her crying in the passenger seat. I thought about the look on my mom's face at dinner, that small, quiet nod that agreed I was a disappointment. If I did this, I knew there was no going back. Nothing would ever be the same. I clicked. Then I picked up my phone, called the bank, and made sure the freeze went through. By the time I hung up, it felt like I'd knocked over the first domino in a long, carefully balanced line I'd spent years reinforcing. By 8:40 the next morning, her card was dead. At 9:12, I had 17 missed calls. By 11, that number had climbed to 31. My phone buzzed so constantly, it felt like it was vibrating in place on the table. I ignored all of them until I didn't. When I finally answered, my sister didn't even say hello. She just launched into screaming, her voice raw and shrill through the speaker. "What the hell is wrong with you? How dare you freeze her card? She's stranded, Ronan. She can't buy books, she can't eat, she can't do anything. What is your problem?" I held the phone away from my ear for a second, letting her rage echo in the air. Then I brought it back, kept my voice steady. "I'm not interested in keeping this up anymore," I said. "I'm done supporting people who don't respect me." She didn't even pause. "You're overreacting. It was a joke. She didn't mean anything by it. You're going to destroy her future over one stupid comment?" My chest tightened, but not with guilt. It felt more like something heavy had finally cracked open. "I've been paying for her future for years," I said quietly. "I just stopped pretending that you're entitled to it." On the other end of the line, there was a burst of static, a choked inhale, a fresh wave of shouting. I didn't wait for her to finish. I pulled the phone away, ended the call, and placed it face down on the table. They thought I wouldn't do it. They thought I'd get angry, then cool off, and eventually send the money again like I always did. They'd counted on my silence, my compliance, my tendency to fix everything and ask for nothing. But this time was different. This time, something broke, and this time I wasn't going to fix it. After that first call, the world didn't explode the way I expected. What hit me instead was silence. Thick, heavy, unfamiliar. Not the kind that comes from peace, but the kind that settles right after you do something irreversible. I waited for guilt to arrive, that familiar tightening in my ribs, the whisper telling me I'd gone too far. But it didn't come. If anything, I felt lighter. Tentative, unsettled, but lighter, like I'd finally loosened a knot I'd been pretending wasn't choking me. I kept my phone face down and spent the next few hours doing something I should have done years ago, taking inventory. Every favor, every payment, every late-night rescue, every time I'd stepped in because no one else would. I wrote them down in a notebook, one by one, and the list got long enough that it felt embarrassing. Not for me, but for how completely I'd been used. And if freezing Ava's card was the first cut, the rest came quickly. I logged into the auto payment portal I'd set up for her car insurance. I could picture the exact moment she'd realize it wasn't going through. I hovered for a second, not because I doubted my decision, but because old habits die hard. Then I hit cancel. Next was her tuition. I called the university financial office, the line clicking faintly as it connected. When the advisor picked up, she greeted me politely, her voice warm in that calm, practiced way people adopt when they sense something delicate. I need to remove myself from all financial responsibility for my niece, I said, effective immediately. There was a pause on her end. Not judgment, but recognition, like she had heard this kind of thing before from people who sounded tired in the exact same way I did. All right, she said gently. We can process that. It felt surreal, saying the words out loud, admitting how deeply involved I had been. When she asked, "Have you been the primary payer for her expenses?" I almost laughed. Primary? I'd been the only one. By the end of the call, the bridge was no longer burning. It was already ash. Later that afternoon, an unknown number lit up my screen. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something told me to answer. When I did, I heard a small, shaky voice. It was Ava. She was crying, not angry, just sobbing softly, breath hitching every few words. "I don't understand," she whispered. "What did I do? Why are you doing this? It was just a joke. I didn't mean it." For a moment, something stung. Not guilt, but memory. I heard echoes of the 15-year-old girl I used to pick up from her driveway, red-eyed and scared after her parents' fights. The girl who'd sit in the passenger seat hugging her knees while I drove aimlessly just to give her somewhere safe to breathe. But the girl on the phone wasn't that kid anymore. She'd grown into someone who thought respect was optional and my help was guaranteed. "If you want to be treated like an adult," I said quietly, "you need to speak like one." A soft inhale, a wounded silence. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Please don't do this." But I ended the call, not because I didn't care, but because caring had become the excuse everyone used to keep me in place. It didn't take long for the next storm to hit. A little after 8 that night, pounding shook my door. Loud, frantic, the kind that rattles in your ribs. I opened it just enough to see who it was. My sister shoved her way in before I could stop her. "You've lost it," she snapped, storming into my living room like she owned the air inside it. "Do you have any idea what you're doing to Ava? She's terrified. She's embarrassed. You froze her card like some petty dictator." "Did you think what she said at dinner was okay?" I asked. She didn't even blink. "She's a kid, Ronan. Kids say things." "She's 19, I said. "She's not a child. And she sure wasn't a child when she took my money." My sister scoffed, waving a hand dismissively. "Oh, please. You act like you're some saint. All you had to do was talk to us, not go nuclear." "I did talk," I said, "for years." Then came the real question, the one she'd come for. "So what? Are you paying tuition or not?" she demanded. "No." She laughed, an ugly, disbelieving sound. "Don't be ridiculous. Ava will have to drop out. Do you understand that? This will ruin her life." "No," I said. "It'll just make her responsible for it." Her eyes narrowed. "Wow, really heroic of you." Something inside me snapped. "You've been using me like a backup generator," I said, my voice sharper than I expected. "Every time something goes wrong, you plug into me like you're entitled to my time, my money, my sanity. I'm done being your emergency plan." Her face twisted. "You're unbelievable." "No," I said. "What's unbelievable is that your husband has time to drink but not work. What's unbelievable is how you get your nails done every 2 weeks but never saved $1 for your daughter's education. What's unbelievable is that you turn me into a lifeline and then resent me for finally pulling back." Her jaw dropped. For a moment she was speechless, rare for her. Then the insults flew. Sharp, personal, the kind you only use when you're cornered. I won't repeat them. They weren't creative enough to be worth remembering anyway. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame cracked. I stood there for a long moment, breathing hard, feeling the echo of her exit reverberate through the apartment. Then I poured myself a glass of water, sat on the couch, and looked around. It was quiet. For the first time in years, the quiet didn't feel like failure. It felt like space. A few days later, my mom called. Her voice was measured, but I could hear the strain underneath it. She said she and my dad wanted to talk things out, said they were coming over. I didn't argue. When they arrived, my mom held a Tupperware of banana bread, like a peace offering. My dad stood behind her, baseball cap crushed in one hand, eyes looking everywhere except at me. We sat in my living room. I didn't offer drinks. I didn't pretend to be happy to see them. My mom wasted no time. "What's gotten into you?" she asked, her voice softening in a way that felt rehearsed. "You're acting cold." "This isn't about the birthday," I said. "It's not sudden." "Teenagers say things they don't mean," she insisted. "You shouldn't take it personally." I stared at her. "Why did you nod then?" When she said it, she blinked. "I didn't want to make the dinner uncomfortable." "As opposed to your son being humiliated at his own birthday?" My dad shifted in his seat. "You know how your sister is." There it was, the family motto, the excuse used for every mess, every manipulation, every disaster they allowed her to create. Yeah, I said. I know exactly how she is. That's the problem. My mom tried again. Ava is stressed. She's overwhelmed, freezing her card and dropping her tuition so suddenly it was extreme. Did either of you ever offer to pay me back? I asked. Once? Silence. Books, housing, meals, insurance, thousands of dollars, countless hours. Did either of you ever ask if I was okay supporting all of this? Nothing. My mom set the Tupperware on the coffee table, her shoulders stiffening. Family takes care of each other. I nodded slowly. Yeah, they do, but that's not what this has been. My dad looked up finally. Maybe you could just take a break, skip this semester, ease back into helping next year. No, I said. There is no easing back. I'm done. They didn't like that answer. They kept circling back to guilt, obligation, tradition, family unity. Eventually, when it became clear I wasn't budging, they stood up. My mom hugged me, stiff and uncertain, like I was someone she'd known a long time, but not very well. My dad mumbled, "We'll keep in touch," then followed her out. The door closed behind them. Silence settled again. But this time it didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like the beginning of something I couldn't name yet, but finally recognized as mine. And I knew in my bones that my family wasn't done. Peace never comes that easily when people like them start losing their grip. 3 days passed. Quiet, smooth, almost gentle. The kind of quiet that would have felt normal to anyone else, but to me, it felt like standing on a frozen lake, listening for cracks beneath the surface. My family wasn't known for letting things go. Silence was never surrender. Silence was strategy. And on the morning of day 4, the ice finally broke. I was brushing my teeth when a notification slid across my phone screen, an email from Ava's university. At first, I thought it was some leftover automated message about her account, but when I opened it, my breath caught. She had tried to apply for a private student loan, and she'd used my name as the cosigner. No call, no text, no conversation. Just my name typed neatly into a form, like I was still the same predictable, reliable fool who would cover everything without being asked. Like she was entitled to my identity the same way she'd been entitled to my money. The email said the request had been flagged because the signature didn't match my records. They wanted me to confirm whether I'd been involved. I stared at my phone for a long moment, jaw clenched, heart pounding, not from anger, but from a kind of grief. A clean, precise grief that hits only when someone proves exactly how little they think of you. When I finally called the financial office, the woman on the line listened as I explained, voice steady but tight. No, I said. I didn't approve the loan. I didn't authorize anything. I removed myself from all responsibility last week. She made a short, sympathetic sound, polite but sincere. I'm sorry you're going through this. It happens more often than people realize. When she paused, it wasn't because she didn't know what to say. It was because she did know, and it wasn't pretty. After hanging up, I set the phone down, palms flat on the table. My apartment felt too quiet. The air seemed thick, like the moment before thunder. An hour later, another unknown number called. I let it go to voicemail. I didn't have the energy, at least not until I saw the transcription notification pop up. It was Ava's roommate. Her voice was tired, frayed at the edges. I don't know what's happening, but Ava's freaking out. She's been crying for hours, slamming doors, saying you're trying to ruin her life. That last line stung, not because it was true, but because I'd spent years being the one who saved her life, the one she called during fights, the one who drove her away from her own house so she could breathe. Now, because I'd finally put up a boundary, I was the villain. By late afternoon, the messages began rolling in again. First, Ava, what is wrong with you? I'm your niece. Another, you said you'd always help me. Why are you doing this over a joke? And then, you're punishing me for being honest. You're ruining everything. Then my sister jumped in. You're crossing a line, Ronan. Fix this today. Followed by the cherry on top, a message from her husband, the man whose greatest achievement was opening another beer before noon. You need to cut the crap. You think you're better than us, but you're not. You're just a pathetic loser with a bank account. I actually laughed out loud at that one. The irony was too perfect. But I was wrong to think the day's ugliness peaked there, because at 7:04 p.m., another unknown number lit up my phone. I almost let it go to voicemail again. Almost. But something in me, some old instinct, told me to answer. Hello? Ronan? It was my dad. But not from his phone, and not in the tone he used when my mom was in earshot. He sounded softer, thoughtful, older. I didn't want your mother to know I was calling, he said quietly. I needed to say something. I sat down without realizing it. Okay. He took a breath. I've been thinking about what you said, about how things have been, and you're right. The words were clumsy, like he wasn't used to forming them. I haven't handled things well, he continued. I let things slide when I shouldn't have. I stayed quiet when I should have spoken up, not just now, for years. A knot formed in my chest, not tight, but warm, unexpected. I'm not asking you to fix anything, he said. I'm not asking you to help Ava or call your sister. I just wanted you to know I respect what you're doing. It takes guts, more than I ever had. We talked for 20 minutes, pauses longer than the sentences, but something in those pauses mattered. For once, he wasn't hiding behind my mom's expectations. He wasn't parroting family first, like a script. He was trying. When we hung up, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired, but also seen in a way I never really had been by him. The apartment dimmed into evening. I turned on no lights. I sat with the quiet. Then, another knock on the door. Not frantic, not angry, not familiar. Just a steady, deliberate knock. I froze. This was new. I walked slowly to the peephole. A woman stood outside, late 20s maybe, professional clothes, dark circles under her eyes like she'd had a long week. She held a folder, not a clipboard, not a badge. And she wasn't someone I knew. I opened the door just a few inches. You're Ronan? She asked. I am. I'm Kara, she said. I work in the university financial aid department. My stomach tightened. If this is about... It's not official, she interrupted, shaking her head. I'm not here in any professional capacity. I just wanted to talk. That threw me completely. She shifted the folder under her arm. I was the one who flagged Ava's loan request. When I saw your name on the co-signer line without a signature, I started digging. She paused, embarrassed. Not in a weird way. Something about it felt off. She looked down, gathering her thoughts. I see this a lot, she said finally. Family members being pressured, students crossing lines, silent donors with no voice. But today, something about the way she reacted when the loan was denied, it just didn't sit right with me. I swallowed. That sounds accurate. Kara gave a small, sympathetic smile. I looked up your contact info. Probably shouldn't have, but I wanted to tell you that you did the right thing. My breath caught just a little. Most people don't walk away, she said. Not after years of giving. It's not weakness to set a boundary. Sometimes it's the strongest thing you can do. She hesitated, then added, and if you ever want to talk more or grab a coffee, I'd be open to it. No pressure. She smiled. Not flirty, just kind. Then she turned and walked down the hall, giving me space instead of taking it. For several seconds, I stood inside my doorway, staring at the spot where she'd been. It felt strange, someone I'd never met offering me more understanding in 3 minutes than my family had in 3 decades. I didn't know what it meant yet, but I knew it meant something. Later that afternoon, I sat on the edge of my bed with my phone in my hand, staring at Kara's name in my recent calls list. Not because she'd called, but because her visit still lingered in my mind like the faint warmth of a touch. I'd barely known her for 10 minutes, but she'd said the one thing I needed to hear from someone. Anyone. You did the right thing. I don't think I realized how badly I needed that validation until it arrived. My thumb hovered over my screen, debating whether to text her. Not to start anything, not in some impulsive, romantic way, just to say thank you. But before I could decide, my phone buzzed in my palm. Ava. They kicked me out of the dorm. I have nowhere to go. Mom's freaking out. Please call me. I stared at the message. My heartbeat stayed slow, steady. Normally, panic would have rushed in. My instinct to fix, repair, rescue. But the frantic grip my family had always had on me felt dimmer now, like someone had loosened their hand without me noticing. Another text arrived seconds later. I'm sorry. I swear I didn't mean what I said at your birthday. Please, Uncle Ronan. Please. Her messages bruised something inside me, but it wasn't guilt. It was memory. The memory of the little girl who cried in my car, the teenager whose essays I had rewritten, the young woman I'd tried desperately to help escape her parents' chaos, only to become part of her entitlement. Then my sister chimed in. You've made your point. Now be a man and fix this. There it was, the old hook. Be a man, fix this. Carry us. Do the work no one else will. Bleed quietly and be grateful we let you. But this time, I didn't feel the usual pull. Not anger, not obligation. Just exhaustion. The kind that makes you put the phone face down and exhale the weight right out of your lungs. So I didn't respond. Not to any of them. Instead, I put on my shoes and went for a walk. It was nothing special, just around the block, the same route I usually took when I needed to clear my head. But the air felt different, sharper, like the world had grown a few degrees colder and clearer. I passed the coffee shop I always passed without noticing. But this time I noticed. Kara was inside. She sat by the window, a laptop open, her hair pulled back messily, a mug steaming beside her. When she looked up and saw me, she didn't look surprised. She just offered a small nod, a real smile, the kind that didn't ask for anything in return. I walked in without thinking, ordered a black coffee I barely tasted, sat across from her. We didn't talk about the loan or my family or the chaos that had been chewing at my life, not at first. We talked about podcasts I'd never admit to liking, the music she played when she needed to focus, books we both owned but never finished. The conversation was easy in a way I didn't realize conversations could be, with no agenda, no emotional traps, no performance. After maybe an hour, I mentioned the texts I'd gotten. I expected her to tilt her head with sympathy or say something comforting in that gentle, therapist-esque voice people use when they feel sorry for you. But she didn't. She just said, matter-of-factly, "You don't owe them anything." No overthinking, no hesitation, no guilt sandwich. Just truth. Pure, simple, freeing truth. It was the first time in years someone said something about my family that didn't make me feel crazy, or dramatic, or sensitive, or selfish. When I left the coffee shop, I felt something unfamiliar sitting under my ribs. Hope, maybe. Later that night, another text arrived from my sister. "You think this changes anything? You'll come crawling back like you always do. And when you do, don't expect us to forget this." That was the last message she ever sent me. And I didn't respond. Not that night, not the next day, not ever. In the weeks that followed, Ava dropped out of school. My sister told everyone who'd listen that it was my fault. My mom stayed mostly silent, too embarrassed to repeat the story, but too stubborn to reconsider her stance. And my dad, true to his word, sent short, careful texts every few days, like he was learning to communicate with me for the first time in his life. As for me, I tried to rebuild myself from the inside out. Adjusting to freedom isn't as easy as people think. Some mornings, I still woke up with a jolt of panic, like I'd missed a deadline or forgotten a payment. I'd grab my phone, expecting missed calls, long, guilt-ridden texts, emergencies waiting on the other end. And then I'd realize no one expected anything from me. No crisis needed my money, no meltdown needed my time, no disaster needed my emotional labor. The silence felt strange at first. But slowly, painfully, beautifully, I began to like it. Kara and I kept seeing each other. Not every day, not with fireworks or grand gestures, but consistently. She came over one weekend and helped me put together a bookshelf I'd bought 3 months ago and then ignored. We listened to records as we worked, and she laughed every time I held the instructions upside down. She asked about my family. I told her everything. The good, the bad, the embarrassing, the parts I'd always brushed over because no one ever listened long enough to hear the end of the sentence. She didn't flinch. She didn't judge me. She didn't call me dramatic or sensitive or ungrateful. She just listened. And stayed. It wasn't a fairy tale. We were two people with dents and cracks, trying to fit our pieces together without expecting perfection. One night, while we were making dinner together, she said something that stuck in my chest like a pin. "You've been the emergency contact for everyone else's chaos," she said quietly. "Maybe it's time to be the main character in your own life." I didn't know how to respond, but something in me shifted, gently but permanently. So here's the final update, just like I promised. Yes, something came of it. And no, I'm not completely okay. Even when you make the right choices, they can still hurt. Boundaries don't erase history, they just rewrite the future. I'm still learning how to stop flinching at silence, still learning how to choose myself without feeling selfish, still learning how to live a life that isn't shaped around someone else's emergencies. But I'm free, really actually free. And after 30 years, that's more than enough. As for Kara, things are good, slow, steady, real. And for the first time in a long time, something in my life isn't falling apart. It's falling into place,